Now, if I were to do my top 5 favorite football people on earth, our next guest would be one of them, and I don't even know who the other 4 are. He is 5-time NFL Executive of the Year. It is Mr. Scott Pioli. Let's clap our hands for my favorite, my guy.
Bobby, you are far too kind to me every time. I appreciate it. I love being on the show. I love being with you.
Yeah,
I'm not necessarily saying the Rich Eisen Show. I love being on a show with you.
No, I heard you say you like me better than Rich. You guys hear that? Yeah, let's clip that.
I heard that. Scott's brought me a lot of joy, too. I'm a Patriots fan, Scott, so thank you so much.
No, it's a good point. He did bring you joy. Yeah.
So much joy.
With my joy, it's just like personal human. I just enjoy the guy. But yeah, you have to go to like surface and football and stuff. I hear you, Chris.
Well, we're a football show.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point.
Thank you. But, Bobby, I did hear that you don't have a favorite team, though. I watch you. I keep my eyes on you.
Yeah, so Matt Castle and I do a podcast for the NFL together, and I grew up in Arkansas and did not have a favorite NFL team and don't have a favorite NFL team. So I was basically going, hey, who should my team be? I don't want to pick a front runner. Like I wouldn't jump on the Chiefs or the Eagles now, and I also don't want to pick a team that really has no significant chance at winning in the next 3 to 5 years. And I'll start with this question. I'm glad you brought that up. So if I were to pick an NFL team, based on that criteria, like I need a middle that has a good shot of being good in the future, didn't grow up with a favorite NFL team. Who should I roll with, Scott?
Wow, that is a tough question because see, I was in the league for so long that I had too many people that I worked with that I care about that are spread across the league right now that I can't pick between them. But for you, just keep rolling with Arkansas. I mean, I look back at the old Arkansas, program back when they did the Southwest Conference before that's how old I am. But those were pre-salary cap days.
Yeah,
but the salary cap that Arkansas was rolling with back in the day was, nothing to sneeze at. I mean, NFL teams couldn't match the Arkansas payroll.
See, it's all day long. See, drink, and now Scott, everybody's going after me a little bit. I love it, though. Let's talk about the Giants for a second. They signed Russell Wilson. They have Jameis Winston now as well. Do you think that the Giants are still in the market for a quarterback this draft?
I think they are because both of those players that you mentioned, they are not long-term solutions. And even though Joe Shane and Brian Daboll are leading the program right now, there is such an influence in terms of ownership in that organization in a positive way that they are going to be thinking about the future. Now, I don't think that they'll sacrifice too much currency in order to jump up and get a player that they necessarily want. But I look at that program, I also think that the Mara and Tisch families are smart enough to know that having Brian Daboll on their staff as their head coach, Brian's been a part of some really important quarterback development in the course of his career. He was with us at the Patriots when we had Brady. He was there when we started to develop your boy and my boy, Matt Castle. But people forget that along with Josh Allen, when he was the offensive coordinator at the Bills, he was the Alabama offensive coordinator, back when they had Tua, back when they had Jalen Hurts. Brian Daboll is a really good coach in terms of developing quarterbacks. So I think if they have an opportunity to get the right person in at the right price without having to sacrifice too much, I could absolutely see the Giants going in on another quarterback.
On with us now, it's Bobby Bones in for Rich Eisen, 5-time NFL Executive of the Year, Scott Pioli. Going back to your front office days, what are GMs and coaches doing right now with less than a month left in the draft?
This is where we used to do these things where we called stack breakers, right? Because you put your board together and you have two separate ways of looking at the board. You've got the vertical stack, which is 1 through 50, where you're ranking players against one another. And then you've got your horizontal stack, which is more by position. And I think what you're doing now is you're getting down to, brass tacks in terms of players that you may have the same grade on, that you may view the same. Let's really do a deeper dive with the coaches on that to see what the coaches have to say. Because, a lot of the teams that I worked with, our coaches didn't get involved in the draft and even start looking at players until February. So that's a short window and a small window. They're still gathering information. So you're busting stacks, you're comparing players to one another as to how you want to order them, which player, regardless of position, you think is the best player available. But I think the other thing that's really happening right now, Bobby, is you're spending a lot of time with your medical people and the information gatherers in terms of getting last minute and updated medical information, and truthfully, a lot of character and background stuff, because a lot of stuff gets hidden and you have to do some real deep diving on who the players are to make sure that they're going to fit your culture. So it's a lot of like real dialing in work right now. And the other thing that you're doing is that you're spending time finding out what other teams are doing or trying to figure out what teams are doing. Because there's this whole process. I always talked about how there's the evaluation process, and then there's the strategic process of the draft. And it's this last month where strategy really becomes an important thing in terms of getting, or hopefully getting, the player that you want to get.
And that leads me to my next question. Barring some crazy like legal issue or something wildly unforeseen, is there really anything that can happen now that happens between today and the draft that would make you change your mind on a player or their position on the board?
I think that there's not that much significant swing, Bobby, because I think if you have something that changes so dramatically at this point in time, then you weren't doing your job the right way the last 11 months. But I think the things that make impact now are the wild things, right? You talk about whether it's a medical situation that comes up last minute, or if it's a character issue, an arrest. You can never discount those things because they certainly pop up.
Tell me, tough question, but give me a favorite draft day memory from all the drafts and all the ways that you were involved in drafts. Like, what comes to your mind?
Well, I think it's some of our favorite draft players in early rounds when I was excited. I was so excited when we were able to get Richard Seymour in 2001. But in that 2001 draft, I think one of my favorite stories was in the second round. I had previously, during the season, I would go out and scout, even though I was the vice president of player personnel. I would still go out and do some scouting the days before games if I could. So we were playing in Indianapolis in 2001, and I went to go see Purdue prior to that. And I remember going to practice and seeing Matt Light in practice. And actually, I saw that same weekend, saw Richard Seymour play at the University of Kentucky. He was with Georgia, but played at the University of Kentucky a game. But seeing Matt Light, being so excited about him, and we were sitting at 50 in the second round. We had just drafted Richard Seymour, and the Jets were right ahead of us at 49. And I would say it was probably around 45 or 46 overall pick. I pick up the phone, I call Matt Light to see if he has anything going on. That's part of the strategy part that I mentioned earlier. And I called Matt up, and I said, "Hey, Matt, how you doing?" I go, "This is Pioli," because I had spoken with him several times. I said, "Have you heard from anybody?" And he goes, "Well, I'm actually on the phone with the Jets right now." I said, "Matt, don't say a word that I called." He had put them on, call waiting. I said, "Don't say a word that I've called. This call didn't happen. Sit tight." So I look at Bill. I said, "Hey, he's on the phone with the Jets, and they're one pick ahead of us at 49. So I start burning up the lines. Bill calls a couple of people. I get a hold of Matt Millen at the Lions, who was at 48. And as they go on the clock, we were able to consummate this trade. We only gave up a sixth-round pick. But, during that time with the Patriots, it was always so good to stick it to the Jets in any way possible, not just on Sundays in the fall. But, you just reveled in any time that you could stick it to the Jets. And we jumped up. And while he was on the phone with the Jets on call waiting, he picks up the phone. I go, "Matt, are you still on the phone with the Jets right now?" He goes, "Yeah." I said, "Well, tell them that we just picked you. You're not available anymore." And we got Matt Light. And he went on to start with us forever, made a Pro Bowl, and was just such an important part of our culture and our overall team intelligence and toughness.
That's an applause story. That's a great story.
That's a
I
great
think
story.
that story itself deserves applause.
Anytime you can screw the Jets, Scott, gotta do it.
Man.
Gotta do it.
You mentioned
I don't feel that way anymore.
You mentioned Coach Belichick. What's he like in the draft room?
Bill and I were very similar in the draft. It was really all business. We had a very small gathering of people. We didn't have a lot of people in our draft room because we didn't see that as a kind of a place of entertainment. It was business, and it was such important business and significant business. So we wanted to eliminate as many distractions as possible. I mean, Robert and Jonathan Kraft were, I go back to those years at the Patriots. Robert and Jonathan were in with us. and then a couple of select scouts and a couple of select coaches. We would have people come in and out, but we didn't have a lot of busyness. And Bill was very dialed in, and we had a lot of conversations. The other really, really important person that was always in that draft room with us, that was very much like Bill and I on draft day, was Ernie Adams. Ernie had such an important role and impact in our organization in not just player acquisition, but in coaching as well. But Bill's, it was we were all the same. It was just all business when it came to draft day. There were a few laughs here and there. Um, I go back to one story. I remember it was a year we drafted Logan Mankins, and we had pick number 32 overall. And Bill and I had been going back and forth and joking about, the idea. He didn't like the concept or the idea of having to draft a guard in the first round, because at that point in time, the understanding in the league was that guards didn't have great value. Logan Mankins had played left tackle in college at Fresno State, but he wasn't projected to be, because kind of like Will Campbell, everyone was talking about how short his arms were and how he wasn't long enough in total stature. But during that draft, the draft was falling in a way where it looked like Logan was going to be the pick. And Bill, it was one of those drafts in that moment, as we were leading up to it, he was actually very funny, because we were just joking back and forth. I can't tell the jokes that were going back and forth or the words and the language that was being used when he was breaking my chops about things getting lined up for Logan Mankins. But it was a lot of fun, because to us the work was the fun. And Bill, you know, Bill and I and Ernie had very similar personalities during the draft.
Scott Pioli is on with us, 5-time NFL Executive of the Year, 3 Super Bowl championships with the Patriots. Team chemistry, obviously, I think about that when I think about the teams that you were involved with. And when you're drafting players, obviously we want the most talented and able with the highest ceiling, but also how much does chemistry come into play when you're trying to continue a culture?
Yeah, Bobby, I love this question, because, the one thing that doesn't change across football at any level, whether it's high school or whether it's college, it's not always about the most talented. It's about getting the right group of people together. And we were always had an old coach that used to talk about it. It's not always the best 53. It's about the right 53. And yes, you wanted talented players, and yes, we went after talented players. But every organization that I was with that was successful, and I include our time, at the Kansas City Chiefs, that ultimately was not totally successful. But we went after players that, yes, they were talented, but we wanted to make sure that we were, getting the right people that fit the culture and the leadership of the organization. So, being with Bill in Cleveland and watching how we did things and what was important and what wasn't important, and then how we got together the second time and we changed some of the player acquisition types, I would say, and the makeup, because every leader is different. And yes, you want talent, but you also have to bring in players that meet the leadership style and culture of the head coach. And I'm a firm believer of this, regardless of what the hierarchy is, whether it's general manager, head coach, or head coach, general manager. Come draft day or any time that there's player acquisition, the general manager needs to become the servant to the head coach, because players don't care about the general manager. They don't care about the front office. They are reacting and responding to and being motivated by the head coach. So you bring in players that fit the culture of your ultimate leader, who is the head coach.
Final question to put you on the spot just a little bit, because I love you, but was there ever a player that you pounded the table for, the team didn't draft, and then you were like, and then he went on to be awesome, and you're like, I told you guys?
Come on, I am not an "I told you so" guy. I can't think, because fortunately, the leadership groups that I was a part of, early on, when I didn't know any better. So when I was able to get in a position where, I was able to have a voice that mattered, or that was listened to, or made the decision. The one player, it's funny, because my wife always kids me a little bit about, there's a particular player, I want to say it was, gosh, what year was it? Tyler Lockett came out. I thought, well, I want to say it was 2015 when Tyler Lockett was coming out. And I wouldn't say I was pounding my table, but I was secretly wishing and hoping that we were going to get Tyler Lockett. He was a player that I fell in love with. It reminded me of so many other good players like him, that I thought he was going to be fantastic. And the feeling was that he was never going to be a top flight receiver. And we weren't sure organizationally how well he could fit in terms of being a special teams player, but I was certain that he was going to be okay. I remember when he went and we didn't get a chance at him, that disappointed me. I think we thought he would be picked later and would have a shot at him later. Yeah, so I was never much of a I told you so kind of guy, because there's so many players that you do fall in love with, that one of them is usually there when you're going to pick.
Lockett was 2015 third round, and I do want to say this about Scott. And just as a plug for Scott, the Scott Pioli and Family Fund for Women Football Coaches and Scouts, it was established 2018 to fund dreams and make it possible for more women football coaches and scouts to defy the gender gap and go for their goals. And I want to give the website, womensportsfoundation.org, for more information if you guys want to read, learn, be a part of. Like I said, he's one of my top 5 football guys for a reason, and I don't have another 4. Scott Pioli. Hey, Scott, thank you so much. There he is, one of my favorite guests, Scott Pioli, for being on the show today. Scott, thank you so much, buddy.
Bobby, thank you so much. I always love being with you. Thanks so much. Appreciate it. And I appreciate the shout out. There's Billie Jean King, Women's Sports Foundation founder, 50 years ago. So I appreciate you giving the shout out, because it is important to have women in men's sports, particularly the NFL. Yeah. Appreciate you.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show live weekdays from 12 to 3 p.m. Eastern on Roku Sports Channel in the U.S.